or these are the types of things that you will be able to do, only because, they didn't have those experiences. They had other experiences, right? And so being a first generation college student is a really meaningful identity to me. One, because when I went to college, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know there was a terminology for being a first generation college student, but it has definitely shaped a lot of the decisions that I make, and also why I do what I do now. And so I'm here today on behalf of the Life of a Scholar, which is a consulting organization that I created really to share strategies and tools with students about going to college, funding it, going to graduate school if you so choose, getting accepted to your program of choice, defending your dissertation. There's so many things that I learned and picked up along the way. And I felt that we all shouldn't have to, quote unquote, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? Because I kind of figured it out, and there were people that helped me figure it out, right? That I wanted to pay that forward to other people. And so that's just a little bit about me. I'm very happy to be here and again, answer any questions that you all have. I guess if I were to share one more thing about my educational training, I went to UNC Chapel Hill for my undergrad and master's. They're both in public health. And then I went to NC State for my PhD in educational research and policy analysis. So that's a little bit about me. Again, so glad to be here, so glad to share. And I guess can I go ahead and get started with my presentation, or should I wait? I just want to check in with our event organizers. I see we're live. Go ahead. All right. Well, I will go right ahead and let me share my screen. I have some slides to share with you all, and we're going to jump into the presentation portion of this afternoon. And so I'm here today to share on the topic of securing the academic bag, 5 steps to help fund your college education. Again, my name is Dr. Callie Womble Edwards. I'm here with Life of a Scholar, and I invite you to join the conversation a number of ways. I see that we are live on Facebook. So if you are on Facebook, hello, thanks for joining in. Feel free to comment in the chat, give us some reactions, let us know that this is helping somebody. If you are here in the room, in the Zoom room, feel free to comment in the chat. If you have a question or if something doesn't make sense to you. And also if you're on social media, feel free to use the hashtag. I know we have the She Is Me mentoring program, so hashtag She Is Me. And also feel free to use the hashtag The Life of a Scholar. We would love for this to be an interactive session. So again, I'll be sharing a lot of content, but if you have questions and comments, feel free to chime in and let us know, and we'll be sure to respond to them. So just a quick background about the Life of a Scholar. I've shared this briefly before, but we are an educational consulting and coaching organization. I founded the Life of a Scholar in 2015. So we've been around for a few years now, right? 7 years to be exact, going on 7 to be exact. And I started the Life of a Scholar really because I wanted to share strategies and tools that I learned with other people. As I mentioned, I'm a first generation college student. I earned my PhD at the age of 27 with a 4.0 GPA. And I don't share that to brag. I share that to say that it's possible, right? Because there was a time in my life when I thought that was not possible to do. And when frankly, some people told me that that was not possible to do. So I definitely overcame a lot of adversities, and I'm here to share my story on how you can do the same in your own life. As I mentioned, I did fund my undergrad, graduate degree, and PhD with scholarships, and that's the focus of today's training. So we're going to talk about how to find those scholarships, how to find those grants, how to make yourself competitive for them, and really set yourself up for success. In addition, the Life of a Scholar also provides workshops like this and trainings, but also different coaching services. So if you're applying to a college or applying to a program and want someone to review your documents, help you with interview tips and trainings, review your resume, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of additional services. So definitely check out thelifeofascholar.com if you are interested. But that's just a little quick background. So a little more about my story. I got a chance to share with some of the attendees prior to the session, but as I'm from Durham, North Carolina, so you may be familiar with Durham. So I haven't gone too far. But I remember thinking these thoughts my senior year in high school. When people were telling me, it was time to apply to college, it was time to apply to scholarships, I kept thinking to myself, I could never apply for that scholarship, or that's too competitive, or that's too much work, or why would I put in all that work if I'll never get that scholarship? Like, these were thoughts that I was thinking as a senior in high school. And the first, myth I want to dispel right now is that, if you don't apply, the answer is automatically no. So don't count yourself out. The myth is that it's too competitive, or that it's too much work, or that you can't do it. But if you count yourself out of the running, then the answer is automatically no. So sometimes we have to really battle our mindset and know that we are worthy of earning these scholarships, that we deserve to be in the space, that we deserve that opportunity. And that's sometimes something that we don't normally talk about in these types of sessions. We normally just talk about, hey, here's the opportunity. But in order to set yourself up for the opportunity, you first have to believe that you can do it. And so it definitely can be a mind game. Let's see, I'm having a few little technical, there we go. So the first tip I'd like to share with you this afternoon is knowing that you can do it is half the battle, right? Like, you have to know that you have what you need within you to succeed. And so after you know that you are capable, then it's time to get prepared. So we're going to start with the assumption that everyone here knows they are capable, knows they can do it, knows that they have everything that they need to succeed. They just need the strategies and the tools. And that's what I'm here today to share with you. So there are different types of free funding, and you might notice here on the slide, free funding. That's what I specialize in, funding that you don't have to pay back. Of course, there are loans and other types of funding sources, but that's not my specialty. My specialty is in grants, scholarships, and monies that you get to keep. So if you look here on the left-hand side of the slide, there's a box. And so I'll go over that first. Scholarships, or free funding, excuse me, is there's different types. And so the first is state and federal grants. And so these are grants or monies that are given by the government. There's also internal scholarships that are given by your university. There are external scholarships that are given by outside donors. There are last dollar scholarships. And if we were in a room, I would ask everyone to put your hand up if you have heard of the term last dollar scholarship, because that's a term that's not as familiar, I think, to a lot of students, but those are really excellent opportunities. I actually received a last dollar scholarship, and those opportunities fill the gap between your unmet need and basically what your university or school or state will provide. So it really fill the gap. So very unique scholarships, and we'll talk a little bit more about them in a little bit. You also need to be mindful of the timing. So there's once only or one-time only scholarships that are just given once. And there are also renewable scholarships that if you make certain conditions, if you meet certain criteria, you'll be able to continue having that scholarship for a number of years. So that's kind of the foundation that you just need to know, the lay of the land, right? The landscape of different types of free funding. Here on the other side of the screen, you'll see this pie chart. So I also wanted to go over that with you. There's lots of different reasons why you can be awarded a scholarship. And most times students are they're only familiar with this part of the pie, which is financial need. And that's important, right? So if your family income is at a certain level, if your parents, if neither one of them had gone to college, for example, like mine, or if you had some sort of financial aid eligibility, then yes, you will be eligible for a financial needs scholarship. However, there's other students who reach out to me all the time and say, oh, well, I'm considered a middle income student, or, oh, there's other things about my financial background that maybe I won't get that type of funding. Well, there's other types of funding available as well. For example, you can get scholarships based on your background. So your ethnicity, your culture, your religion, also your academics. So, getting good grades, being interested in a particular field of study, performing well in different tests, etc. Right? And then there's other abilities. So some some students are familiar with, folks who get sports or athletic scholarships, different artistic skills. And this is just scratching the surface. So if you get nothing else from this slide, I want you to see that there's so many different types of funding available. And in our time together, I'm going to go over some of those opportunities, but this is a huge area to dive into in just 1 hour. So I wanted to definitely make sure you kind of had a little bit of a background in the different types of free funding that are available. And I'm not able to see the chat, but please pause me if there's a question in the chat that I need to go over. So my second scholar tip for you this afternoon is that a winning scholarship strategy is a multifaceted strategy. And I say this because a lot of times students only apply to those large renewable scholarships, right? So a scholarship that'll be for a couple of $1,000s to even a full ride, and be renewable for a couple of years or their whole time at the university. And those are excellent opportunities, but I also want to share with you that what you might consider a small scholarship or a one-time scholarship, those opportunities also add up and can be very beneficial. So I would encourage you to apply for both, and that would provide you with that multifaceted strategy. So now I'm going to go over the 5 steps, now that we kind of have a background on the different types of funding available and the fact that we need to have a multifaceted strategy. The first tip is to complete your FAFSA, so the free application for federal student aid. If we were in the room again, I would have you raise your hand, tell me who has done this before or who has heard of this before, because this is something that you need to apply for as soon as possible, starting in your senior year of high school and then moving forward each year that you would like to receive financial aid. It opens annually on October 1st. And here's the link on the slide here for you to go to on the federal government website where you can actually access an application. So a few facts about this application. It is required for all students, regardless of income. So no matter if you consider yourself a low income student, a middle or a high income student, if you are interested in any kind of aid, you need to complete this form. It basically asks for information from your parents and also from your own information regarding tax information. And a lot of times it'll be, I found when working with students, that first time gathering all your information may take a little time, but you kind of get the hang of it after going at that first round. It must be completed annually while you are in college, and this determines your eligibility for those state and federal grants. So remember that first slide when we went over the different types of funding? This is how you determine if you are eligible for any of those state and federal grants that are monies you do not have to pay back. So before I go into step 2, I want to pause. Are there any questions about step 1, which is applying for a FAFSA? And I don't see any in the chat here, but wanted to pause to give a moment if anyone had a question or a reaction. Okay, I don't see anything, but if you do have a question, again, I want this to be an interactive conversation, so feel free to talk back to me if there's something that doesn't make sense or if you'd like to share anything from your experience. So we have step 1 down. Let's move on to step 2. So step 2 is to identify internal scholarships and deadlines for your schools of choice. So this requires you to, 1, know what your schools of choice are, right? And have that list of the places where you intend to go. And a scholar tip is that you can apply early if it's non-binding, and it can help you to gain first priority to recruitment scholarships. So does anyone know what I mean when I say non-binding? Has anyone heard that term before? I'm gonna wait to see if there's anyone in the chat. Anyone heard that term, non-binding? Basically what that means is if something is binding, it basically is saying that you are promising the university that if you get accepted, you will attend. And I usually recommend that students don't pursue those opportunities unless you and your parents agree that this is really your number one place. The reason why I say that is because a lot of times having options will allow you to maximize the funding possibilities, right? So if you are not necessarily locked into a school, then you can kind of see where the best package is, financial aid package, and kind of go with that, versus if you kind of already promise the university that you are attending, then you're almost at the mercy of what package they provide you. I know there are some universities that do provide early admission without it being binding, so you just need to really check that fine print. But the opportunity here is that if you do apply to a school early and it's non-binding, you likely will gain access to first priority access to those recruitment scholarships, because they're going to want to recruit you to come to the university. So that's something that not a lot of students don't think of. But step 2 is to identify those internal scholarships. So you may be saying, okay, I get it, Dr. Callie, I need to identify the internal scholarships, but how do I do that? And I'm glad you asked. There's a number of places where you can identify internal scholarships, and here are some tips for that. So first, you want to start with university websites ending in edu. So some examples on the screen are nccu.edu, duke.edu, unc.edu. You can see I'm a North Carolina girl, right? Because all these are North Carolina schools, but there's a number of other schools that you could also look at. You want to look at their admissions and financial aid pages. Those will be key places where they will have scholarship opportunities listed. You can also attend their virtual open houses, and that's a really great opportunity, especially right now during the pandemic time when a lot of things are going virtual. I know for many of these universities on the slide, I've gotten emails about virtual open houses, and that's an opportunity where you can actually speak with an admissions counselor and learn about any scholarships that they have available at their institution. And I always encourage students, don't be afraid to email and ask about opportunities. It's almost like the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So the worst that they could say is they don't have any scholarships available to prospective first years, but likely they will. And the fact that you are reaching out shows initiative and can also help you to develop rapport. So it's a really good skill set to have. So those are a few tips that I would encourage you to try if you are looking for those internal scholarships at the university. So before I move forward, any questions? Feel free to chime in at any time if there's a question or something that doesn't make sense. Okay, I don't hear anything, so I'm going to keep moving forward.
We do have one question.
We do.
Yeah, yes. We do have one question. Are you able to see it, or do you need me to?
No, I'm not. Sorry, I only see my slides.
Okay, no worries. I can read it out loud for you. It is, are there scholarships that are available for certain programs that might not be publicized on the financial aid websites?
That's a great question. So are there scholarships that are available for certain programs? I'm thinking you're talking like majors and that sort of thing that may not be on the main website.
Yes.
And the answer is yes, right? So there might be opportunities that aren't listed publicly on the financial aid website or the admissions website. And it could be for a couple of reasons. So sometimes it might be those recruitment scholarships, right? Where they are really trying to get people to attend that have already applied. Some ways that you can kind of learn about those, right? I would definitely encourage you to attend those virtual open houses, because a lot of times there's opportunities for small breakouts with your program or major. So you may speak to a program coordinator or someone in that particular major where you can ask those questions. And then also you can always check out your actual college. So when I say college, you have an overall university, right? So like NCCU or Duke University, but then you may have like a college within the university. So a college of business or a college of arts and sciences. And so when you kind of dissect the website and look into those specific colleges, there may be opportunities listed in their kind of smaller units that may not be on the larger university webpage. Does that make sense? That was a great question. I hope that was helpful. Let's see. I don't see anything in.
She said yes, thank you.
Yes. Okay, great, great. Awesome. Well, thank you for that question. And again, if there's any questions, feel free to just chime on in. But so now we've talked about those internal scholarships, and I want to move on to our next tip. Well, before I go there, these are some UNC System scholarships, and I should have mentioned at the beginning, I will make these slides available to the She Is Me mentoring program director, so you don't have to write these links down. But if you are interested in any UNC system schools, here are two opportunities that you might be interested in. So the Cheatham White Merit Scholarship is at NC A&T and NC Central University. And the second link has a link to all of the institutional scholarship opportunities within the UNC system. So those are two opportunities that I will make sure that we have available for you if you are interested. So our next step here is to identify external scholarships. And this is a place where I, in my own experience as a student, really benefited from the most. So, external scholarships, these are scholarships that you apply to like at a foundation or a program that is not affiliated with a particular university. Or if they're affiliated, they may be affiliated with many universities versus just a specific program. And so you can really take that scholarship with you wherever you go, essentially. So it's a really great opportunity. In general, they can be used at any college, but I always encourage students to read the fine print. So for instance, some external scholarships can only be used at certain type of schools. So they may say that you must be enrolled in a 4-year college or university or a 2-year college or university. Maybe they have a state requirement or a major requirement. So it's very important to read that fine print, but in a lot of instances, you can take those scholarships with you no matter where you attend. So how do you find these external scholarships? I always encourage students to look at credible scholarship websites. And what I mean by that is scholarship websites that were created by reputable sources. On this slide, I have a number of credible external scholarship websites. And so again, I'll definitely make sure that this is available to you to kind of take a look at. But in general, you just want to be careful of scams. It's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, but there are scammers out here that will take advantage of students wanting to pursue their dreams. And there's a link here at the bottom of this slide where you can learn more information from the Federal Trade Commission, where they actually have information on how to detect scammers and how to protect yourself against scammers. But unfortunately, there are some websites that seem too good to be true, and they are. So I always want students to just be mindful, especially when you're putting your personal information on these websites, that is a reputable source. But a lot of these websites that I have listed here are not just one individual scholarship, but a page that lists multiple scholarships. So you can almost think of it as kind of like a database or an Amazon of sorts, right? So you go to the website and then you can search for what fits your needs. So if it's your background that you're looking into or a specific program that you're interested in, or a specific major, you can kind of search scholarships for specific things. So it's not just one scholarship that's going to be on these websites, but a list of scholarships. Now I'm going to go over a few of some of them that are listed here, but some that are not, to give you a little bit of a synopsis of what to expect on some of these database websites. So in case you've never gone to any of them before, you may not be sure what they look like or what to expect. So these next couple slides are going to go over that. So this slide here, this is CFNC. Again, I'm a North Carolina girl, so I have to show you something from North Carolina. And this is a College Foundation of North Carolina. And so this is a screenshot I took here, and at the bottom it has a link to the website, but you can actually search by different counties. You can put the title of the scholarship that you're interested in, or just search by the amount or the deadline, etc. So I was viewing one of 10 of 121 scholarships. So again, there's multiple opportunities there. And I hope you all can hear me. It says my internet was unstable there for a bit. So please let me know if I go in and out. But that's one opportunity. This next is a College Board scholarship search. And so some of you may be familiar with the College Board from some of your testing that you may have taken for college, but they actually have a really strong database of scholarships as well. As you can see here on the website, they have over 2,200 programs totaling nearly $6 billion dollars. And so again, the link is provided at the bottom of this slide. But it does show how you can, you would click that start button and then you can search scholarships on this page as well. Another opportunity, it is kind of your one-stop place for career exploration, training, and jobs. I love how you can search by different levels of study. So depending on if you're looking for a bachelor's degree, a graduate degree, professional degree, etc., you can filter here. You can also see the name of the award, the level of study, the type of award it is, the amount, and the deadline. So a lot of these characteristics are going to be very similar across, but as you can see, they have a little different setup. And as you can see here, when I took this screenshot, they had over 8,000 awards available. So there's lots of monies available for you. It's just a matter of kind of going out and seeing what fits your needs the best. I have another scholar tip here, and it's that most large corporations also have scholarship programs. So I would encourage you to check companies that you frequently visit. So your grocery store, your bank, etc., or places where you and your family members work to see if they have a giving fund or a foundation or some type of scholarship arm. And you may be surprised. I have a slide here where there's some family favorites, some things that you might use all the time and may not have ever thought that they have a scholarship program, but they do. So definitely can consider that. Here's a few examples of corporations that have pretty substantial scholarship programs. The first is McDonald's, right? Who here has not heard of McDonald's? They have a scholarship, and I put the link here for one of their scholarships. They're Black and Positively Golden, but they have several scholarship programs. This particular one is for $15,000. Also Burger King, right? Who here has not heard of Burger King? It's a very popular corporation here in the US, and they too have a scholarship program. And if I'm not mistaken, they have two different levels. And so there's one if you are a Burger King employee or the child of a Burger King employee. There's another if you are not. So definitely it goes back to that tip earlier about reading the fine print. So making sure that you apply to the correct one depending on what fits you. And then thirdly, I listed here Dr. Pepper. This is one that I recently became aware of probably within the last year, and they have two different options, a very large over $100,000 scholarship, and then another one that's about $75,000. So it's still two pretty large opportunities, and I put the link here as well. And those are just a couple of examples. Again, I could tell you about a million different opportunities, but I think it's always helpful when you think about things that are in your own community, right? So what grocery store do you have in your community? What bank do you have in your community? Where do your parents work? Your friends of parents work? Where do you work, right? A lot of places, even if they may not have a very large multi-$1,000 scholarship, they may still have maybe a book scholarship or something that all that money ends up adding up. So you have so many resources at your disposal, no matter where you are in the world. So that's just a couple of examples of external scholarships. I wanted to also leave you with some what I would consider pretty large external and renewable scholarships that you should know about. And there's some links here for you to investigate. And again, these are just some of the what I would call the heavy hitters, but there are a lot of them, right? But these are just some that I couldn't do a scholarship training without talking about these. The first is the Gates Scholars program, and a little background about that. This is kind of the 2.0 of the Gates Scholars. And so there used to be what's called the Gates Millennium Scholars Program. I was one of those scholars, and that funded a large portion of my undergrad and graduate school. They are a last dollar scholarship. So the Gates Millennium Scholarship has now sunsetted in 2016, I believe, but they have a 2.0, which is just called Gates Scholars. And it too is a last dollar scholarship. And if you remember from the beginning of our talk, right, what does that last dollar mean? That means they're going to meet your unmet need. So everybody's award might look a little different, but the ultimate goal is that you don't have to take out a loan or something to meet the gap. I know that this 2.0 version has some different stipulations than the one that I earned did. I believe it's focused on undergrad as opposed to graduate school. And I think there might be a STEM component as well. So definitely, again, read that fine print and take a look at the website. But it is a really great opportunity and can really be customized to meet your needs. A few others I'd like to just highlight here. We have the Coca-Cola Scholars, Ron Brown Scholars, Jackie Robinson Scholars, and Reagan Scholars. And all of these range from $20,000 to $40,000, and they are renewable scholarships. Something I really love about all of these types of scholarships is that usually they have a cohort component so that you can meet others that are in the same program. They may have some sort of leadership development where you may go to a conference or have some sort of retreat where you get to know more about yourself and others who have earned the scholarship. So there's a lot of professional development in some of these renewable scholarships that may not always be possible in some of the one-time scholarships, which is another reason why it's a good idea to apply to a large range of opportunities because you kind of get something different with each one. All right, so before I move on, I know I just gave you a lot of information and I'm looking at the clock here and it looks like we're good on time. Before I go on to the step 4, are there any questions about step 3, which is all about external scholarships? And I don't see anything in, let me see, I think I can see the chat. Okay. All right. Nope, I don't see any questions. I see somebody just had to hop off. See you later. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, well, I will go ahead and go on to step 4, but if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and I'm happy to answer them. But once you kind of have you have your FAFSA done, you have your internal scholarships and your external scholarships. So what could possibly be step 4? Developing.
Dr. Kelly, we have a question.
Yes.
Will you speak to making yourself competitive? So when you're talking about some of the large external, as well as some of the even your local scholarships, what are some ways that students can make themselves competitive? And I think about some of the age ranges that we have on. I think we have from like 7th grade or 8th grade on up. So there are some ways that they can kind of prepare to make themselves a very competitive scholar for these applications. So if you could address that question. And then we have some that were submitted from young ladies who were working or had other commitments. And so we're going to have some of those kind of trickled in probably after you finish.
Okay, perfect. And that is actually an excellent segue because that's exactly what step 4 is all about. How do you make yourself competitive, right? It's not enough just to have this list. It's good, right? You need the list. You need to know what to apply to, but also how do you make yourself stand out in the crowd? So, right, you see this image and you want to be that little green person, right? That stands out in the crowd and ultimately earns the scholarship. There's a few things. One, you you have to really know what is it that they are looking for, and how can you find that out? I mean, it sounds very simple, right? But reading and rereading the application, like what's the prompt? What's the purpose of the scholarship or the grant, right? If it was named after somebody, well, who was that person? So an example could be with the Jackie Robinson Scholarship. You really need to know, not that you have to like know the entire life history of Jackie Robinson, but it is really important to know, well, who was Jackie Robinson? Like, yes, he was a popular trailblazing athlete, but he did so much more than just he was so much more than just his athletic ability. He did social justice, he was in art, he was in XYZ, right? And so really knowing one, what the opportunity is asking for, that will help you to match your experiences to their criteria. And I love what you said here about if there are folks here that are in the 7th grade or younger, fantastic, because you are getting such an early start, and that is amazing. That should be commended. I celebrate all of you, everyone who is here. I celebrate everyone who is here, but especially our youngest scholars, right? Because you're getting a head start, and you're going to be ready when it comes to be senior year. You're gonna be like, oh, I got this. I've already applied to things. And you may not know, we didn't talk about it here, but there are scholarships for every age. There are scholarships that are available. I've worked on a couple of scholarships for folks who are in, middle school, or even opportunities that are across grade levels. I know Google has a Google Doodle scholarship where you apply to, it doesn't matter what age, like they have different brackets. So like you would be judged against people in your same age range. So definitely I'm happy to talk more about that, probably in our closed session, about different opportunities that are available to different age ranges. But it's never too early or too late to start looking into scholarships, but the earlier that you do so, the more competitive, or even the more time you have, right? But one thing, you have to personalize your material. So know what they're looking for, know how your experiences match what they're looking for. And a few helpful strategies. Number one, be specific and tell a story. Who doesn't love a good storyteller, right? I've served on a number of scholarship review boards and read a lot of applications. And after a while, they start sounding the same. People say the same things, and you want to be the person that stands out in the crowd. And I actually do a whole session on standing out in the crowd, but just to give you a quick boilerplate, telling a story and drawing the reader into your story, right? So I could, of course, tell you that I'm a first generation college student, and that's cool. But I could tell you how, my freshman year in college, I felt like everyone had this playbook for things to do and who to meet with and going to office hours and doing university research and XYZ. And I just was glad to be in college. And I was looking around like, wait, I missed it. I missed the memo. Did everybody have a meeting and I wasn't there? And I can talk about how my roommate was so excited about undergraduate research, and my other roommate was always going to office hours. And I was just kind of looking like, is there other things that I should be doing? And so if I can tell you that story, that tells you a little more about what it means to be a first generation college student than me just saying it. And that's just a quick example, but think about your experiences in terms of stories, and, being specific, like drawing the person in. What did it feel like? What did it sound like? Where were you? What happened? All those things can really help your story to come to life. Another kind of simple tip, but people miss it, proofread, right? You want to make sure that when you are writing a scholarship essay, you are one that is grammatically and, spell check and all those things, but you want to use the right words. And I say that because when you're writing scholarship essays, if you're applying to a lot at one time, it could be very easy to have a very strong essay, and then you just kind of tweak it here and there for different opportunities, which is totally fine. I mean, you want to maximize your time, but it is a cardinal error to submit an essay to one organization with the other organization's name on it. And I know you would say, oh, I would never do that. You would be surprised. When you're applying to a lot of scholarships at one time, you have to be organized. And then the next tip I'm going to talk to you about is about how to be organized and kind of keep things separate and aligned. But proofread. It's a quick thing, something that's very helpful and can really help to mitigate some of those errors. And then my third strategy would be to have a peer or a mentor reviewer. So of course, I do reviews all the time with Life of a Scholar, but you don't have to just reach out to me. You can reach out to your mentors here in the She Is Me mentoring program. You can have your friends read over it, your teachers in school, your advisors in school. There's lots of people who can provide advice, if nothing else, but to tell you if the idea makes sense. Did you answer the question? Did they have questions after they read it? All those things can really help you to make sure that you are standing out in the crowd. So I know that was a lot. I could definitely go deeper in that as well. But does that answer your initial question? Let me see. I see the chat here. We speak more to making yourself competitive in reference to slide. Thank you. If you are a recipient of more than one, so here's a question in the chat. If you are a recipient of more than one large scholarship, how do you determine which one to commit to, or can you take them all? That is a great question. I would say read the fine print first, because you may not have to decide. You may be able to do them both or multiple, right? Especially if they're external. So I know a lot of scholars who are Gates scholars and Coca-Cola scholars, and they applied to both. Those scholarships are very similar. They ask for similar things. They are looking for similar types of students, and it's not uncommon to have a student that's a Gates scholar and a Coca-Cola scholar. And in those cases, normally your and this could vary from student to student, but normally your Coca-Cola scholarship or whatever scholarship is like a number amount, right? Like I think Coke is like 20,000 or something. That would be applied to your award first, and then the last dollar scholarship always comes in last to see if there's any unmet need. So that's kind of a unique situation. And that's when, we could have a whole separate conversation about refund checks and those sorts of things. But just double check the fine print. A lot of times you can have both, but if it's for a university, right? So if you have a full ride to one university and a full ride to another, then more than likely you have to choose one of those universities. But if it's an external scholarship, then you have some flexibility. And let me see the chat. Okay, you said that answered your question. Great. So we have a question here. Did being first generation college student add pressure to you? And what did you find, in what ways did you find beneficial to overcome your circumstances and to get help from school counselors or have a push from your parents? That is an excellent question. I'm happy to talk about that right now. So did being a first generation college student cause extra pressure to me? I think looking back on it, that's an interesting question, because you don't know what you don't know, right? Like I didn't know anything different than being a first generation college student. So I can't say it added pressure on me, because that was always my experience. But I do know that my parents very much wanted me to go to college and very much were supportive and encouraging of, in Cali, you can do anything, you can apply to anything, really being encouraging and motivating in that way. And of course, I didn't want to let them down. I mean, I think that's something that's pretty common for first generation college students. You kind of feel like, the family name is riding on this, I'm going to be the one. So in that regard, I guess it was, I would say motivation. I wouldn't say it was pressure. It was more so I had a lot of motivation, because it wasn't just for me. It was bigger than me, right? Like even getting my doctorate, I wrote in the beginning of my dissertation, which is the long paper that you write basically at the end, in my dedication, I'd said that, to my mom, this is our degree, because she sacrificed so much for me to be in the position to be able to pursue that degree. So I definitely feel it was an added responsibility and an added motivation, but not necessarily pressure. At least I wouldn't describe it as pressure. And the next question was, in what ways did you find beneficial to overcome these circumstances? Did you get help from your school counselors? Do you have any push from your parents? So I definitely would say I had a lot of push from my parents, particularly, I mean, both my parents, my mom and my dad, but I would say especially my mom. I always tell this story about how I was voluntold to do a lot of things, right? So in high school, I was in the IB program. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with IB, International Baccalaureate. It's very similar to AP or the honors program, and it was very challenging. And my senior year in high school, I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I don't want to do this. This is too much. I just want to like kind of coast and, just graduate and go to college. And I thought we were on the same page, but my mama was not having it. And so when we went into the meeting with my counselor at the time, my counselor also wanted me to do IB and thought I could do it. And he and my mom kind of tag teamed me to sign up for it. And it ended up being a good experience. I ended up earning the IB diploma, but I never would have saw that in myself. And it's similar to my scholarships. My mom always was like, oh, you should apply for this. You can do this. And I mean, she would definitely encourage and see things in me that I didn't see in myself. And without that motivation, I would not be where I am today. So if there's any parents on the line, I definitely want to say, even if your student may not seem like they hear you, right? And it's so important. You have such a important and pivotal role, whether you know exactly what they should be applying for or not. The fact that you are in their life and encouraging them, I think makes a difference. It made a difference for me, and we see in the research, it makes a difference for so many students. So yes, I would say my mother in particular was very encouraging and motivating. And then I did have great educators, great teachers that also served as mentors to me. So by no stretch of the imagination did I get here by myself. There was a community of people who definitely collectively helps me to get to where I am today. Yes, voluntold and strongly recommended. Yes, I was very much all of that in my journey, but it made me who I am today. I honestly would not have earned nearly as many scholarships, would not have gotten as many or achieved as many things if not for people seeing something in me that I did not see in myself. So very, very appreciative to those opportunities. Absolutely. Awesome. So if there's any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I just have one more tip here before we just have more Q&A time. But yeah, step 4 was all about developing your package of materials. And our last step here, it may seem simple, but you would be surprised. Submit before the deadline. This is really important, particularly for students if you're applying to multiple scholarships your senior year of high school. Because think about it, you have a lot of things going on. You're not just applying to scholarships, you're also in classes, you may be in any kind of extracurricular activities. I don't know, you may work, you may have family responsibilities, et cetera, right? So you are busy people, and now you're adding an extra thing on top of all of that, which is your scholarship search. And so you want to have some effective organizational strategies for success. So a few ideas to help you think through this. One is to create a timeline and stick to it, right? So put down, what I always do is I put down everything on my calendar that is a priority, that has to happen. And then I build other things around that. And for some of these scholarships, you may have to factor in time for mailing in things, right? Like I know this is 2021 and everything's electronic and virtual, but there are some scholarships that require you to mail them in with postage. And one opportunity I can think of off the top of my head is the Ron Brown Scholars. Excuse me, that was my timer. So I know we're almost out of time. The Ron Brown Scholars Program requires you to mail in your application. And so you want to factor in time for that, because if it gets to them past the deadline, they're not going to review it, right? And you don't want to put in all this hard work of finding the right opportunity, matching your experiences to theirs, crafting the great application, and then it not even be reviewed because it didn't get in on time. So put those submission dates on your calendar. And also something we didn't talk about in detail here, but if you have any opportunities that require other people, right? So not just you to write a letter or write a statement, but also to have a recommendation letter, you want to frequently check in with them, right? You want to make sure that they have everything that they need to write a strong recommendation, and that takes time. So you really just want to put all these things on your calendar and check in with yourself early and often. I love this quote by Benjamin Franklin: "For every minute spent organizing, an hour is earned." So really taking some of that time to build in some of those strategies on the front end will save you a lot of time on the back end. So I know I have a few minutes left, but as I close, I have to leave you with a few more tips. Success is intentional, so develop a plan. And the fact that you all are here today tells me that you are building your plan to success. And so that should be commended. I appreciate you all being here, and I encourage you to continue to do things like this. So continue to be engaged with the She Is Me mentoring program, continue to reach out and ask for help and advice. A goal without a plan is just a wish. So you want to be intentional about developing your success plan. As I close, please feel free to connect with me. I left some of our social media handles here on this slide. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We also have a website, so definitely join our social media community. We have a free email newsletter, so you can subscribe to that, where we share tips and strategies. Would love to continue this conversation. And I will put this link in the chat after we close, but this is a link to our feedback form. It's an anonymous survey, which just lets me know how I did today. If there were things that you learned, if there's things that you'd like to know more about. There is a place if you'd like to leave your contact information, you can, but it's optional. You could just leave your feedback and submit it, and I won't even know who submitted what. But if you are open to it, I would love to get some feedback on how this session was and how it can be improved in the future. And that's all I have. So again, my name is Dr. Callie Womble Edwards. It's been such a pleasure talking with you all this afternoon, and I really would love to continue our Q&A after these slides. So thank you so much, Ms. Tabitha, and thank you everyone for having me this afternoon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for such an informative presentation. To you all that joined us on Facebook, thank you so much. We are going to be ending this portion now, but as you can see, Dr. Callie did share the ways that you can get in contact with her in the Life of a Scholar organization. If there's further information that you would like, we'll also post a link in the comments to that feedback form once she shares that with us, and we are going to go into our close.